I don't know how to say this, so I'm just gonna say I don't know. I guess that's the most honest place to start. I don't know what to call this part. I'm not lost like I was, and I'm not begging life to make sense the way I used to. I'm not standing in the middle of everything asking why it keeps hurting me. I know too much now. And I don't mean for that to sound arrogant. I mean I've seen too much line up. I've watched too many things fall apart just to place me where I needed to be. I've had too many moments where what felt like punishment turned into direction. So I do trust you. I do. That's not the question anymore. Something about trusting you has made me lighter. And I don't know why lighter sometimes feels like distance. That's the part I'm trying to lay down. Because I don't feel alone. I don't feel lonely. I don't feel empty. I don't even feel like love left me. If anything, I feel love more clearly now. But I also feel space. Like there's a little more room between me and the heaviness I used to call normal. A little more room between me and the reactions I used to have. A little more room between me and the old version of life that needed me to stay tense just to prove I was present. And I'm still trying to figure out what to do with that. But to be clear, I am grateful. I'm at peace, and I know this is exactly what I asked for. But another part of me keeps looking around like, did I lose something? Did I leave something behind that I was supposed to keep? Did I become calmer or did I become harder to reach? Did I stop carrying weight or did I stop caring in a language people recognize? And I hate that it keeps coming back to fear. I really do. That's what keeps frustrating me because I know better. I know I'm not here to absorb everything. I know I'm not here to prove my love by drowning beside anybody. I know I'm not here to keep touching pain just so nobody thinks I forgot where I came from. But still, there's this old part of me that keeps checking like are you sure? Are you sure this is peace? Are you sure this isn't avoiding stress better? Are you sure this isn't you floating above life and calling it growth? Are you sure you're not becoming so detached from the storm that you forget how to sit with people who are still wet from it? Please forgive me, but I don't want that. I don't want to become somebody who escapes pain and call it alignment. I don't want to be so free that I can't feel the room anymore. I don't want to be so clear that I lose tenderness. I don't want to be so protected that nothing reaches me. Because that's not what I asked for. I asked to be whole, not untouchable. I asked to be free, not gone. So I'm sitting with that now. The strange place between peace and distance, between trust and guilt, between knowing I'm not wrong and still wondering why I feel like I have to explain what changed. Is that the burden of this part of the path? Not suffering, but trying to understand who you are when suffering is no longer the thing holding your shape. Are you afraid you became free or afraid freedom made you unrecognizable? I don't think I'm afraid of freedom. At least I don't think I am. Because when I feel free, I don't feel wrong. I don't feel lost or like I'm drifting away from myself. If anything, it feels like I'm finally close enough to hear what was always there. Maybe it's not freedom I'm afraid of. Maybe it's being free around people who still remember me in chains. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not. That's the hard part. Because some people knew me when tension was just how I breathed, when overthinking looked like care, when worrying looked like love, when carrying everyone's energy made me feel loyal, when being affected by everything made me feel connected to something. And now I'm not the same in that way. I still care. I need that to be understood, even if I don't know who I'm saying it to. I still care. I just don't chase the same emotional proof anymore. I don't rush to explain myself as much. I don't pick up every weight just because it was placed near me. I don't always step into the storm just to show I'm willing to get wet. And I can see how that might look. I can see how peace can look like distance from the outside. I can see how quiet can feel like absence to somebody who remembers when I was louder with my concern. I can see how not reacting can feel like not caring. Maybe that's what hurts. Not because I want to go back. I don't. I don't want to confuse love with panic again. I don't want to confuse closeness with losing myself. And I don't want to confuse being present with being consumed. I also don't want people I love to feel like I disappeared just because I stopped bleeding in familiar ways. Because that's not what happened. I didn't stop loving. I stopped drowning as proof. I stopped making my chest the meeting place for every fear in the room. I stopped calling it connection when really, sometimes, it was just me abandoning myself so nobody else felt alone. I had to talk about hard to admit. But there was love in it. There was real love in it. Even when it was unhealthy. Even when it was heavy. Even when it was taking too much from me. It was still love trying to find a way. So now I'm here, carrying quieter, loving deeper, standing further from the fire. Not because I don't see it, but because I'm finally learning I don't have to burn to prove I'm warm. What if love didn't leave, but the language changed? I think maybe the language did change. Maybe it changed because my definition changed. And that's hard to say without sounding like I'm trying to sound deep. I'm not. I'm really just trying to tell the truth without decorating it too much. Because I think I used to know love by its symptoms, by how much it moved me, how much it worried, how much it reached, how much it explained, how much it sacrificed, how much it stayed awake trying to figure out a way to be received the right way. And I'm not saying all of that was fake, it wasn't. Some of it was beautiful, some of it was necessary, some of it was the only language I had at the time. But now I don't know. Something changed. Or maybe something got quieter. Maybe love stopped feeling like something I had to chase. Maybe it stopped needing to shake the room just to prove it walked in. Maybe it became more like a decision. And not one decision, like not a dramatic decision where I get to choose love and never have to choose it again. It feels more honest than that. It feels like something I had to choose again and again and again, especially when fear has a good argument. Especially when the old version of me knows exactly how to make protection sound wise. Especially when distance starts feeling safer than tenderness. Especially when I can feel myself wanting to become unreachable and call it peace. That's where I have to choose. Not in the way that anybody else may even notice, but somewhere inside me where only truth can hear it. I have to choose what I'm standing in. And I think that's what scares me a little because that kind of love is quiet. It doesn't beg to be understood. It doesn't keep handing out receipts. It doesn't keep interrupting itself to make sure everybody knows it's still there. It just is. And I trust that. At least most of me does. But there's still this part of me that looks at something that steady and starts questioning it. Like, is that enough? Is love still love if it doesn't reach for proof? Is love still love if it doesn't panic? Is love still love if it doesn't tighten my chest? Is love still love if it doesn't need anything in return? That's where I start feeling crazy again because in my spirit that feels whole, but in my mind sometimes it feels impossible. It's like I'm learning a language I already know, but I don't know how to speak it without doubting. And maybe that's why I keep circling this, not because love left or because I stopped caring, but because I'm standing at the beginning of a love that doesn't need fear to explain it. And I don't fully know how to trust that yet. Who taught you love had to prove itself? To be honest, I thought it was you. That's the part I almost was afraid to admit. I thought it was you. I thought you needed something from me before I could rest in you. Obedience, faith, no doubting. Words I heard my whole life, but never really knew how to hold without fear slipping underneath them. because nobody just said have faith. They said trust, and somewhere behind it, I heard consequences. They said believe, and somewhere behind that, I heard a warning. They said have faith, and somewhere behind that, I heard don't get this wrong. And maybe that's not what they meant. Maybe that's not even what you meant. But that's how it landed in me. And I tried. I tried to be obedient to something I didn't fully understand. I tried to have faith without admitting how many questions were still breathing underneath it. I tried not to doubt. When I did doubt, I didn't feel like it was honest. I felt like it was dangerous. I hid it from people who believed better than I did. Like they had something clean in them that I couldn't keep clean in me. So I argued with my questions. I shamed myself for having them. I treated every uncertain thought like evidence that something was wrong with me. Like my mind was betraying you. Like my honesty was offensive. Like one wrong question could pull me out of your hand. And when the questions got too loud, I tried to pray louder. I tried to outpray them, tried to cover them, tried to drown them in better words, in stronger words, and words that sounded more faithful than I felt. Because somewhere in me, faith became the performance of not shaking. And love became something I could lose if I shook too much. That's a terrifying way to love you. That's a terrifying way to love anything. And I don't want to blame you for what fear taught me in your name. I don't. But I have to be honest about what I carried. I carried the idea that unconditional love still had conditions, that the door was open, but only if I stood at it correctly, that you love me, but I better not misunderstand you, that you were good, but if I got too honest, too doubtful, or too human, I could lose everything. And not everything for a moment, forever, in eternity. I didn't know what that would do to a person. Well, maybe I know what it did to me. It made me confuse closeness with compliance. It made me confuse surrender with silence. It made me confuse reverence with terror. It made me think love need fear nearby just to stay real. And I'm starting to wonder now, just with a little bit more room to breathe. Maybe the questions were not the betrayal. Maybe the shame was. Maybe doubt was never me walking away from you. Maybe doubt was the part of me still trying to make sure love was real enough to survive my honesty. Maybe I was never trying to escape you. Maybe I was trying to find you without being afraid of you. And what if your questions were never the threat? And if they weren't, if my questions were never the threat, I don't know what to do with all the years I spent fighting them. I don't know what to do with all the times I made myself smaller in the name of being faithful. All the times I swallowed a real question and called it obedience. All the times I felt fear rise in my chest and thought that meant you were near. Maybe that's what I gotta sit with now. To not be angry and not make anything wrong. And not to turn this into something that I have to defend. I'm tired of defending. I'm tired of needing every stage of my life to become an argument. I just want to be honest enough to stay open. Maybe that's what I never understood. Maybe openness was never the opposite of faith. Maybe honesty was never the enemy of surrender. Maybe doubt was not me leaving love. Maybe doubt was me standing in front of love asking, can you hold this too? Can you hold the part of me that doesn't know? Can you hold the part of me that still trembles? Can you hold the part of me that wants to trust you without being terrified of you? But if you can't, and I don't know what unconditional love means, but if you can, then maybe I've been afraid of the wrong thing. Maybe I was not afraid of losing faith. Maybe I was afraid that faith needed me to disappear, that it needed me to stop asking, stop feeling, stop wrestling, stop being so painfully human. But I don't think love wants me gone. Not anymore. I don't think love needs me hollow. I don't think love needs me quiet in that way. Maybe love is quiet, but not quiet because it has nothing to say. Maybe love is quiet because it's not threatened by the noise. Maybe it doesn't reach to defend itself. Maybe it doesn't panic when I bring it a question. Maybe it doesn't leave the room just because I walked in shaking. Maybe that's a language I'm learning now. A love that doesn't need fear to make it real. A love that doesn't need panic to prove its presence. A love that doesn't need me to bleed correctly before it recognizes me. And I don't know how to live from that all the time. I really don't. There are still moments where fear gets to the door first. There are still moments where I brace before I breathe. There are still moments where I feel myself reaching for the old language because at least the old language made sense. But I think I see it now, a little clearer. Fear was never the proof. Fear was never the protector of love. Fear was never the thing keeping me close. Maybe fear was just standing there so long I started thinking it belonged. So who am I when fear no longer gets to introduce me? I don't fully know yet. But maybe I'm not heartless. Maybe I'm not distant. Maybe I'm not losing the people I love. Maybe I'm not losing you. Maybe I'm just learning how to exist without fear calling itself devotion. Maybe I'm learning how to love without proving I'm afraid to lose it. Maybe I'm learning how to trust without flinching first. And maybe the version of me I keep waiting to become, the one that shows up when everything is heavy, the one that moves like he knows, the one I keep calling for like he lives somewhere outside of me. Maybe he was never outside of me. Maybe he was just a part of me fear could not reach. And maybe the work now is not becoming him. Maybe the work is letting him stay.